in a clash that stunned the world. A prince who abandoned his crown faced a queen of daytime television who refused to hold back. When Prince Harry sat down on The View with Whoopi Goldberg, what began as a routine interview spiraled into an explosive confrontation, exposing raw truths about privilege, victimhood, and accountability. This is the story of a royal unraveling under the weight of unfiltered honesty captured, live for millions to witness. The studio lights of The View burned with an intensity that seemed to amplify every moment, casting sharp shadows across the familiar circular table where the co-hosts sat, the hum of professional-grade cameras, and the rustle of production assistants moving in the wings. It was June 26, 2025. And the show was about to host one of its most high-profile guests in recent memory, Prince Harry, the former Duke of Sussex, who had stepped away from royal duties 5 years prior. His latest memoir, a follow-up to his controversial 2023 bestseller, Spare, had reignited global fascination with his narrative of royal estrangement, personal trauma, and the pursuit of truth. Today's appearance was meant to be another carefully orchestrated stop on his promotional tour. Chance to share his story with an American audience known for its sympathy toward his cause. Harry entered the set with a practiced smile, his posture relaxed yet deliberate, dressed in a navy blazer and an open-collared shirt that suggested approachability. The audience erupted in applause, a wave of warmth that he acknowledged with a nod. He had grown accustomed to these moments, the adulation of crowds who saw him as a rebel prince, a man who had dared to defy the monarchy for love and authenticity. But as he settled into the guest chair, his eyes scanned the table. Lingering briefly on Whoopi Goldberg, the show's veteran moderator, her expression was unreadable, her signature round glasses catching the studio lights in a way that obscured her gaze, their notepads and coffee mugs arranged like props in a carefully staged drama. The opening segment proceeded smoothly. He answered with the ease of someone who had rehearsed these talking points countless times, weaving in anecdotes about his wife Meghan and their shared commitment to mental health advocacy. The audience laughed at his self-deprecating humor, sighed at his reflections on fatherhood, and applauded his calls for compassion in a divided world. Whoopi, who had remained largely silent during the initial exchanges, leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped on the table. The shift in her posture was subtle, but it carried the weight of a storm gathering on the horizon. Harry, Whoopi began, her voice cutting through the convivial atmosphere with a clarity that demanded attention. You've been on quite the media tour lately. Books, documentaries, interviews, interviewer, everywhere. What's the real reason you keep telling your story, over and over again? The question was deceptively simple, but its edge was unmistakable. Harry's smile tightened, a flicker of unease. Crossing his features, "Well, Whoopi," he replied, his tone measured. "There's been so much misinformation, so many lies spread by the press and others. I want to set the record straight, not just for me, but for my family." Whoopi tilted her head, her expression still inscrutable. "The truth," she repeated, letting the word hang in the air. "That's interesting, because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you've been telling a lot of different versions of this truth. Which one should we believe today?" The audience stirred, a ripple of surprise passing through the crowd. Harry's jaw tightened, and a slight flush crept up his neck. "I've been consistent in my story," he said, his voice firm but tinged with defensiveness. "The facts haven't changed. My family, the institution they threw me, and my wife under the bus to protect themselves, we were left with no choice but to step away." Whoopi raised a hand, her gesture both commanding and dismissive. "Hold up," she interjected. "Let's talk about this thrown under the bus situation, because I've been watching this whole saga play out, and I'm confused. Sounds to me like you landed pretty softly for someone who claims they were thrown under a bus." The studio fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the room like a heavy fog. Harry's hands gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles whitening. "You don't understand the pressure we were under," he said, leaning forward. "Slightly. The constant scrutiny, the racism my wife faced, the complete lack of support from the institution, it was unbearable. We had no choice but to leave." Whoopi's eyebrows shot up, her expression a mix of skepticism and incredulity. When you're working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, no choice is when you can't afford to take your kid to the doctor. The other co-hosts exchanged glances, their discomfort palpable. Joy Behar shifted in her seat, her pen tapping nervously against her notepad. Sunny Hostin's eyes darted between Whoopi and Harry, as if anticipating an explosion. Sarah N. offered a tight smile, her attempt at diffusing the tension falling flat. The audience, too, seemed to sense the shift, their earlier enthusiasm replaced by a hushed expectancy. Harry's composure wavered, his voice rising with a hint of indignation. It's not about the money or the opportunities. It's about the emotional toll, the betrayal. My family turned their backs on us when we needed them most. You can't put a price on that kind of pain. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, her gaze unwavering. And another thing, she pressed on, her tone unrelenting. You keep talking about wanting privacy, but you're on every talk show, every podcast, writing books, doing documentaries. If you want privacy so badly, why are you here, sitting across from me, right now? Harry's eyes narrowed, his media training struggling to hold against the onslaught. Because someone has to tell the truth, he said, his voice cracking slightly. The real truth, not the sanitized version the palace wants people to believe. If I don't speak out, the narrative gets controlled by people who don't care about us. Whoopi nodded slowly, her lips pursing as if weighing his words. Okay, let's talk about truth, she said, her voice taking on a harder edge. The truth is, you were born into incredible privilege that billions of people will never have. And when things got tough, when you didn't like the rules of the game, you picked up your ball and went home. That's not what happened, Harry snapped, his composure fraying at the edges. You have no idea what it's like to live in that fishbowl, to have every move scrutinized, to watch your wife being destroyed by the media while your own family does nothing to help. Whoopi leaned forward, her voice steady but cutting. You're right, I don't know what it's like to be a prince. But I do know what it's like to be scrutinized. I know what it's like to be torn apart by the media. I know what it's like to be a black woman in America facing racism every single day. And you know what I didn't do? I didn't run away, and then spend years complaining about it on television. The studio fell silent, the air thick with tension. Harry's face paled, then flushed red, his breathing becoming more visible as Whoopi's words landed like blows. The audience, the co-hosts, the crew all seemed to hold their breath, sensing that this was no ordinary interview. This was a reckoning, and it was only just beginning. The silence in the studio stretched, a taut wire ready to snap. Harry's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the arms of his chair. An unflinching gaze. The other co-hosts remained frozen, their expressions a mix of shock and uncertainty. Joy Behar's pen had stopped tapping, her notepad forgotten. Words. Sarah N. stared at her coffee mug as if it might offer an escape from the escalating confrontation. The audience, too, was riveted, their earlier applause replaced by a collective hush. Whoopi pressed on, her voice steady and unrelenting. You want to talk about your wife facing racism, she said, her tone measured but piercing. That's real, and that's serious, and nobody should have to deal with that. But millions of people face racism every day, Harry, and they don't have the luxury of retreating to a mansion in Montecito. They don't have million-dollar deals to tell their story. They just have to get up every morning and keep fighting. Harry's voice cracked as he responded, his emotions bubbling to the surface. You don't know what we went through. You don't know what it was like to feel completely alone, to feel like the whole world was against us. Alone, Whoopi's laugh was sharp, devoid of humor. You were alone. You had each other. You had your children. You had friends, resources, options. Do you know how many people in this world are truly alone? Do you know how many people are fighting battles every day with nothing but their own strength to rely on? Harry's eyes glistened with unshed tears, his carefully constructed public persona beginning to crumble. I think you're being incredibly unfair, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You're attacking me for trying to protect my family. I'm asking you to take responsibility. There's a difference between protecting your family and constantly playing the victim. And right now, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've made a career out of being a victim. The words hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. Harry's mouth opened and closed several times, his eyes darting between Whoopi and the cameras, as if searching for an escape. The audience remained silent, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented, a moment of raw, unfiltered truth that transcended the usual talk show banter. A career out of being a victim, Harry repeated, his voice rising with indignation. How dare you say that to me? You have no idea what my family has been through. You have no idea what it's like to lose your mother the way I did, to have that trauma exploited by the same people who killed her. Whoopi didn't flinch. You're absolutely right, she said, her voice steady. I don't know what it's like to lose my mother that way. That's a tragedy, and I'm sorry for your loss. But Harry, that happened over 20 years ago. At some point, you have to stop using your mother's death as an excuse for every decision you make. The gasps from the audience were audible. Now, a collective intake of breath that echoed through the studio. Even the seasoned co-hosts looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats as the conversation took a darker turn. Joy Behar whispered something to Sunny Hostin, who shook her head almost imperceptibly. Sarah Haynes's hands were clasped tightly. In her lap, her earlier smile long gone. Whoopi continued, her voice gaining momentum. And let's be real here. You talk about people exploiting your mother's death, but what exactly do you think you've been doing? You've written about her in your book, you've talked about her in interviews, you've made her death part of your brand. So tell me, what's the difference between what you're doing and what you say everyone else did? Harry's hands were shaking now, his composure completely shattered. The difference is that I'm her son, he said, his voice breaking. I have the right to tell her story, to honor her memory. Those vultures in the press, they just wanted to sell papers off her corpse. Honor her memory. Whoopi's tone was incredulous. Comprised the Fivanese television by writing tell-all books about private conversations. By turning your family drama into a Netflix series, that's how you honor your mother's memory. Harry's tears spilled over, and he wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand. You don't understand, he said, his voice trembling. She would have wanted me to tell the truth. She would have wanted me to protect my family the way she couldn't protect herself, would she? Whoopi leaned back, her expression skeptical. Because from what I remember about your mother, she was trying to build bridges, not burn them down. She was trying to modernize the monarchy, not destroy it. She was using her platform to help people, not to settle personal scores. You didn't know her, Harry said, his voice raw with emotion. You don't get to tell me what she would have wanted. You're right, I didn't know her personally, Whoopi acknowledged, but I watched her like the rest of the world. And what I saw was a woman who, despite everything she went through, tried to rise above it. She didn't spend her time on talk shows complaining about her in-laws. She didn't write books exposing private family conversations. She used her pain to help other people. I am helping people, Harry protested, his voice weak but defiant. My foundation, my work with veterans, my mental health advocacy, all of that is making a difference. Are you, Whoopi challenged? Or are you helping yourself? Because it seems to me that every time you do something charitable, it comes with a press release. Every time you help someone, there's a camera there to capture it. Every time you talk about mental health, it's somehow connected to your own trauma and your own story. The studio felt like a pressure cooker, the tension building with every word. Harry's breathing was labored, his face streaked with tears. The other co-hosts looked like they wanted to intervene, but the moment was too charged, too raw. The audience was completely still, their eyes fixed on the unfolding drama. That's not fair, Harry whispered. I'm trying to make a difference. I'm trying to use my platform for good. Then use it, Whoopi said simply. Stop talking about yourself for 5 minutes and actually help someone. Stop making everything about your pain, your trauma, your victimhood. There are people in this world with real problems, Harry, people who don't have the luxury of processing their trauma in multi-million-dollar deals. My trauma is real, Harry shot back, his voice cracking with emotion. Just because I have money doesn't mean my pain doesn't matter. Nobody said your pain doesn't matter, Whoopi replied, her tone becoming more measured. But pain is not an excuse to hurt other people. Pain is not an excuse to betray your family's trust. Pain is not an excuse to air private conversations for the whole world to see. We all have pain, Harry. The question is what we do with it. Harry stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I can't do this, he said, his voice shaking with a mixture of anger and desperation. I won't sit here and let you attack me like this. Sit down, Whoopi said firmly. We're not done here. Yes, we are, Harry replied, his voice trembling. I came here to talk about my book, not to be ambushed by someone who clearly has it out for me. I don't have it out for you, Whoopi said, remaining seated while Harry stood over the table. I'm asking you the questions everyone else is too polite to ask. I'm treating you like an adult instead of a fragile little prince who needs to be handled with kid gloves. Don't call me that, Harry snapped. Don't you dare call me that. Call you what? A Prince. Whoopi's voice was calm but cutting. That's what you are, isn't it? Or do you only want to be called a prince when it's convenient for you? The question hit like a physical blow. Harry's face crumpled, and for a moment he looked like a man stripped bare, standing in a television studio with nowhere to hide. The studio was a cauldron of emotion, the air thick with the weight of Whoopi Goldberg's words and Prince Harry's unraveling composure. The cameras continued to roll, capturing every tremble, every tear, every crack in the facade of the man who had once been a symbol of royal stoicism. The audience sat in stunned silence, their earlier enthusiasm replaced by a palpable sense of discomfort. The co-hosts, too, were frozen. Joy Bihar's pen lay abandoned, and Sarah Haynes's eyes darted nervously between Harry and Whoopi, as if hoping for a commercial break that would never come. Whoopi leaned forward, her voice softer now, but no less incisive. You know what your problem is, Harry? You want all the benefits of being a prince, but none of the responsibilities. You want all the sympathy of being a victim, but none of the accountability of being a grown man. You want to be both the hero and the victim of your own story, and that's not how life works. Harry's sobs were audible now, his shoulders shaking as he struggled to maintain some semblance of dignity. I just wanted to protect my family. Then protect them, Whoopi said quietly. Stop exploiting them. Stop using them as props in your victim narrative. Stop turning your children into symbols for your crusade against your own family. If you really want to protect them, give them the one thing you never had: privacy. The silence that followed was deafening. Harry stood there, tears streaming down his face, his hands trembling as he reached for his jacket. The cameras captured every moment of his breakdown, every tear, every tremor. I think I need to go, he said finally, his voice barely audible. No, Whoopi said, her voice firm but not unkind. What you need to do is face the truth. What you need to do is stop running away every time someone asks you hard questions. What you need to do is grow up. Harry paused at the edge of the set, his back to the cameras, his shoulders heaving with emotion. For a moment, it seemed as though he might turn back, might face the challenge Whoopi had laid before him. But then he shook his head and continued walking, disappearing into the wings as the studio remained silent. The moment stretched, an eternity of unspoken tension. Then, slowly, Harry reappeared at the edge of the set, his face a mask of raw emotion. Tears still streamed down his cheeks, but there was something new in his eyes, something darker, closer to rage. You want me to face the truth? He said, his voice low and dangerous. Fine, let's talk about the truth, Whoopi. Let's talk about how you sit there in your comfortable chair, making millions of dollars, lecturing me about privilege, while you've never had to live a single day in my shoes. Whoopi raised an eyebrow, clearly unfazed by his shift in tone. Here we go, she said, her voice calm but laced with warning. No, you don't get to dismiss me, Harry continued, walking back toward the table with purpose. You want to talk about using pain for profit? What exactly do you think you've been doing your entire career? You've made a fortune off being the angry black woman who tells uncomfortable truths. You've built your entire brand on being the person who says what others won't say. So don't lecture me about exploitation when your whole career is built on the same thing. The audacity of his words sent shockwaves through the studio. The audience gasped, and the co-hosts exchanged alarmed glances. Sunny Hostin's eyes widened, her hand rising to her chest. Sarah N. looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. But Whoopi remained calm, her expression almost amused. Did you just try to lecture me about being a black woman in America? She asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Did you just try to explain my own experience to me? Harry's momentum faltered, but his anger pushed him forward. I'm saying that everyone has their struggles, everyone has their pain, and everyone finds ways to cope with it. You cope by being the truth teller on television. I cope by sharing my story. The only difference is that you get praised for it and I get attacked. The difference, Whoopi said, standing now to meet Harry at eye level, is that I earned my seat at this table. I didn't get opportunities handed to me because of who my grandmother was. I built this from the ground up, and you think I didn't work? Harry shot back, his voice rising. You think military service doesn't count? You think the years I spent in Afghanistan, the people I tried to help, the veterans I've supported, none of that matters because I was born into the wrong family. Your military service absolutely matters, Whoopi acknowledged, and nobody is taking that away from you. But let's be honest about how you got there, shall we? You think a regular kid from a regular family would have gotten the same opportunities? You think they would have gotten the same protection? You think they would have been able to leave the military and immediately start a foundation with millions in funding? Harry's face reddened, his voice shaking with anger. You're right. I was born privileged. I had opportunities other people didn't have. But that doesn't invalidate everything I've been through. That doesn't mean I haven't suffered. That doesn't mean I don't have the right to tell my story. Nobody said you don't have the right, Whoopi replied. But having the right to do something doesn't mean you should do it. Having the right to air your family's private business doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Having the right to profit off your trauma doesn't mean it's healthy or productive. So what would you have me do? Harry demanded, his voice raw with desperation. Stay silent. Let them continue to lie about me and my wife. Let them destroy our reputation while we say nothing. I would have you be better than them, Whoopi said simply. I would have you rise above it. I would have you use your platform to actually help people instead of settling scores. I would have you show your children what real strength looks like, not what victimhood looks like. The mention of his children hit Harry like a blow, his anger cracking to reveal the pain beneath. Don't you dare bring my children into this, he said, his voice breaking. Everything I've done has been to protect them. Has it? Whoopi pressed. It looks like you've made them part of your brand. It looks like you've given them exactly the kind of attention and scrutiny you claim to hate. The studio was a battlefield of emotions, the air heavy with the aftermath of Harry's confrontation with Whoopi. His face was streaked with tears, his body trembling as he stood at the table, his anger and pain laid bare for the world to see. The co-hosts, still reeling from the intensity of the exchange, sat frozen, their usual banter replaced by an uncomfortable stillness. That's not what I wanted, Harry said, his voice breaking as he addressed Whoopi's accusation about his children. I just wanted them to be safe. I wanted them to grow up in a world where they wouldn't have to deal with the same things I dealt with. Then stop talking about them in public, Whoopi said, her voice gentler now but still firm. Stop using them as examples in your interviews. Stop making them part of your narrative. Give them the privacy you claim you wanted for yourself. Harry was silent for a long moment, his breathing ragged as he grappled with her words. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. It's too late for that now, isn't it? The damage is already done. It's never too late to change course, Whoopi said. It's never too late to choose a different path. But you have to want to change. You have to want to be better than your pain. I do want to be better, Harry said, but his anger was returning, his voice gaining strength. But I won't be lectured by someone who doesn't understand what I've been through. I won't be told how to heal by someone who's never walked in my shoes. There you go again, Whoopi said, shaking her head, making it about you, making it about your unique pain that nobody else could possibly understand. Do you know how narcissistic that sounds? Do you know how insulting that is to everyone else who's ever suffered? I'm not narcissistic, Harry protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Then prove it, Whoopi challenged. Stop making everything about yourself. Stop turning every conversation into a discussion of your trauma. Stop needing to be the center of attention all the time. Harry's face contorted with a mixture of pain and rage. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know me at all. Asterisk, I know enough, Whoopi replied. I know that you're a grown man who's spent the last few years having a very public temper tantrum because your family didn't give you everything you wanted. I know that you've hurt people who loved you in the name of protecting yourself. Stop it, Harry said, his voice desperate. Just stop it. I know that you're standing here crying on national television because someone finally asked you to take responsibility for your choices, Whoopi continued, her voice relentless. Harry shouted, his voice echoing through the studio. The outburst froze everyone, the audience, the co-hosts, the crew. You'll leave, you'll storm off, and write another book about how mean I was to you. You'll do another interview about how you were ambushed and attacked. Go ahead, Harry. Add me to your list of villains. I'm sure I'll be in good company. The cruelty of the truth in her words seemed to break something in Harry. He stood, their tears streaming down his face, his body shaking with the force of emotions he could no longer contain. "I hate you," he whispered, the words barely audible. "I hate all of you. You don't understand anything. You don't understand what it's like to have your whole life picked apart by strangers." "You're right," Whoopi said calmly. "I don't understand what it's like to be you. But I understand what it's like to be strong. I understand what it's like to face adversity and come out better on the other side. I understand what it's like to use your pain to help other people instead of just helping yourself." Harry wiped his nose with his sleeve, his appearance a far cry from the polished prince who had walked onto the set. "I tried to help people," he said. "I did try, did you?" Whoopi asked. "Or did you try to help yourself and tell everyone it was about helping other people? There's a difference, Harry, and until you understand that difference, you're going to keep finding yourself in situations like this." The silence that followed was broken only by Harry's quiet sobs. Finally, he straightened, wiping his face with both hands. When he looked at Whoopi again, there was something different in his eyes, not anger, but defeat. "I can't do this anymore," he said quietly. "I can't sit here and let you tear me apart piece by piece. I came here to promote my book, not to be psychoanalyzed by someone who clearly despises me." "I don't despise you," Whoopi said, her voice carrying a note of compassion for the first time. "I pity you, and I hope someday you'll find a way to break free from this, the cycle you've trapped yourself in." But Harry was already moving, gathering what was left of his dignity and heading for the exit. This time, he didn't stop when Whoopi called after him. "Running away again, Harry," she said. "How's that working out for you?" He paused at the edge of the stage, his back to the cameras, his shoulders sagging. Then, without another, long seconds before Whoopi turned back to the cameras, her expression unreadable. "Well," she said simply, "I guess that's one way to end an interview." Dive into the gripping saga of this unforgettable television moment. What broke Prince Harry? Was it Whoopi's relentless truth-telling or the mirror she held up to his choices? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more in-depth stories. And join the conversation on what it means to face accountability in the public eye. Don't miss out. Read now and let your voice be heard.